You want my middle name too?
No.
So I guess you don't want any accents either. Hello. Heck yes. Heck yeah.
And just their mannerisms are kind of like, I don't give a care about anything in this world. I'm with my friends, it's my buddies.
I think that people need to be comfortable with themselves. No, I'm serious. I mean, I think the masculinity stems from being comfortable with oneself.
What's interesting is, there's a lot of research that suggests that a lot of what comes across as ideal masculinity or ideal femininity in a given society are the markers of wealth or social status, right? So in the 19th century, Shane would have been regarded as an ideal man. Because the big muscular tan guy was the guy out working in the fields.
Yeah.
And that meant he didn't have money, wasn't successful. It was the small, thin, pale guy who was witty and charming because he spent all his time reading books. Those are the things that signaled successful masculinity in America and in England in the 19th century. So masculinity is a moving target. I think it's always been a moving target, and it remains a moving target with a practical consequence of always keeping men anxious about whether or not they're performing their masculinity properly. When I was growing up in the 1980s, there were three sort of very different images of masculinity. There was Sylvester Stallone and the sort of hyper-masculine, hyper-macho, non-communicative, violent male. But then the other two images that I had in the 1980s were Alan Alda and who played Hawkeye Pierce in MASH, and Michael J. Fox, both of whom were witty and charming, and Michael J. Fox's character was known for dressing up and being more professional in his appearance. And Alan Alda, both the actor and the character, were understood to be more sensitive men than your typical male. So there were these sort of conflicting images in my time, my youth, of what constituted masculinity. There's still conflicting images today. And I think the fundamental effect of this is that it creates real and ongoing anxiety. You can never be sure you're the right kind of man.
I think everybody questions themselves. I mean, I've seen the biggest, strongest guys, fall to the wayside in the light of people who have done so much in their life, and it's just, you're never at the top of the heap. So yeah, I guess you're always being checked as a male in our society. I don't think the media plays as much a part of it as your daily interaction, and so there's always testing going on. There's always the pressure of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a male.
Right. Well, the image of masculinity and the publicly preferred image of masculinity changes on a regular basis. And one way of looking at this that I've become recently much more supportive of is to argue that whatever the bar is, society keeps moving the bar or changing the target, because that keeps everybody on both sides of the gender divide, struggling to figure out how to perform the role. And in the process, especially in a consumer capitalist society, as you struggle to perform masculinity properly, you buy the things that are necessary to be masculine. As you struggle to perform femininity properly, you buy the things that are associated with being feminine. And so there's a sense in which it is advantageous, especially in a consumer capitalist society, to change the models.
There was nothing in here. There was absolutely nothing in this house except white walls, was exposed pipe and brick. And I like the industrial look. Industrial, to me, is also kind of a manly thing, because to me, when I think of industrial, you're thinking of, working in a steel mill or something, and it's all hot, and you're doing stuff. I don't know if that's a masculine thing, but I mean, to be kind of rugged like that, I like that. I like keeping things modern. I like sleek edges. I don't like clutter. I mean, I want the place to be a reflection of me and the way that I feel. So I have, if you look around my house, I have books and things. I have movies and stuff that I enjoy. On my coffee table is books about archaeology and things like that. Those are things that are important to me. It makes me feel like I'm at my house.
So how long ago did you start working out? Why?
Maybe a year.
Okay.
About a year ago.
Okay.
I wasn't comfortable with myself anymore. I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I decided I didn't like what I saw. So I changed it. Early 1900s up until 1990s, even to 2000s, women wanted guys to express emotion. They wanted to be able to talk about things in a way that women could understand. Now you have that switch where women are like, well, I don't want my guys to be too cushy. I want my guys to be kind of rough and manly and not talk about any of that stuff. So now you've gone through that 10-year transition, 10 or 20-year transition. So if you're asking me about masculinity, I think for me anyway, it's good to have a good union of both. That you can have communication, but you can also still be manly.
I guess the way that I view a masculine male would be somebody who is tender and caring on the inside and can be there emotionally, but doesn't wear it on his sleeve. There's a little more with. I mean, I've lived long enough now to see enough people that know that's a facade and the ideal or some notion of an ideal person, and so any role is going to be an illusion. The idea of the hero is to be well-rounded.
Please welcome from Chicago, Gary Park! Tim Hayes, everybody, Tim Hayes. My women friends are always commenting on my outfit. I don't think in terms of outfits. When I get dressed, all I think is whether or not I look too gay. A little gay's okay. It's cool if I look good dancing to Lady Gaga at a club, but it's so not cool if I look like Lady Gaga.
I like reading GQ. I like dressing well. I like having immaculate hygiene. I like to take care of my hair. I like to be properly groomed. That entails my face.
The ideal man is really a struggle over what the ideal man is in any given moment. And the same is true, for example, with Charlie Sheen. On the one level, Charlie Sheen is an extension of something that I've commented on in my classes all the time, which is that the primary way to perform masculinity right now, the primary way, I would argue, but not the only way, is to not give a damn. And that is to visibly not give a damn. So you wear clothes that are brand label clothes, but they look shabby, and you wear them without a belt, and you wear your shirt untucked, and you have gel in your hair, but you purposefully muss it to make it look like you just got out of bed, but not really. And so, in Charlie Sheen, people who say Charlie Sheen doesn't give a shit, of course he does. He cares a great deal about what people think about him. That's why he goes on television and does interviews. That's why he did the tour circuit for a while. But he works very hard to perform the identity of someone who is unconcerned with others' views of himself. And that's one sense in which masculinity typically is defined in opposition to femininity. Femininity, as it's performed especially on this campus and in many other parts of America, is defined by attention to personal appearance. So masculinity must be, I don't care about my personal appearance, and by extension, I don't care what people think of me. But by the same token, if you're wealthy, it becomes a little uncomfortable, perhaps, to perform the role of I don't care, because you want to show off your wealth. And so I think a lot of the sort of manscaping metrosexual phenomena is really a class issue. It's an issue of, I want to be able to show off the wealth and status that I possess by virtue of purchasing the right kinds of products, grooming myself in a certain way, doing manicures. All of that is part of my masculinity, say men who contest the I don't give a shit image. Men contesting that image say, my masculinity is going to look fabulous. It's going to look gorgeous. And if you assume that that's femininity, I'm going to contest that back. Well, I think the best way of addressing the issue of what is the ideal man, what is the ideal woman, is that it's a football, as it were, in a very highly contested game where all the players are struggling to push the image of ideal masculinity in directions they like or value. And in the process, again, the people who are sort of caught in the middle trying to figure out who they are presented with multiple images. So, to go back to the 1950s, there are at least two very different images of ideal masculinity in the 1950s. One is the television image, which is the sanitized breadwinner, knowledgeable, quietly confident male. The other is James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, Marlon Brando on the Waterfront, the tough, brooding rebel who can't fit in and who is rebelling against everything. And really, you can see in those two forces sort of the setup to the 1960s on a certain level, right? There's, at post-World War II, there's a lot of men who simply want to come home and settle down and start a life and be calm and happy. But there's also a lot of social change happening during the 1950s that's happening very much under the surface for a lot of men and women. But it's still happening, and that tension is being reflected in those rebellious characters. And so,
You had, back in the 1950s up until, I don't know, maybe 1990s, that guys weren't supposed to express emotion. People need to take charge of their life. If you are comfortable with yourself, you don't care what kind of music. If somebody says, oh my God, I can't believe you listen to that music. Nobody listens to that. Well, I do. I don't really care what you think. It's mine, and I like to read literature. I like to read things about history. People don't want to spend time reading history. I read that, and I think a lot of masculinity nowadays stems from being comfortable with oneself.
To educate yourself, to build yourself up physically and spiritually and mentally. So I think you have to really grab hold and separate yourself from the things that you are exposed to that are superficial.